thank you so much for joining us tonight for our Senior Student and Parent College Information Night. Obviously, it is the beginning of the year, but we are full swing underway, and I know as your seniors are full steam ahead. And so we want to do whatever we can to support you in this process, because obviously this is big. This can be overwhelming, and whether you've done this is your fourth kid and you're like, this is old hat, I'm going because I'm supposed to and I'm here, or this is your first and you have no idea what's happening, or you're somewhere in the middle. We are here to hopefully do what we can to support you through this process and ask your questions, make sure you get your questions answered. It is obviously a very different admissions process if you're looking at a four-year school specifically than when you and I went to college. And I constantly have to remind parents that it is a very different experience that their child is going through than we all went through. And so, again, whatever we can do to explain it and help you navigate this is what we're here for. My name is Alana Reyes. I am the Director of Counseling here at George Mason. I want to introduce the team I have here tonight.
I'm Dana Kieran, so I'm the counselor for seniors with the last name A through F.
And I'm Brad McAdam, and I am the counselor for seniors whose last name is G through O.
Valerie Chesley, who has the seniors at the end of the alphabet, and Bob Palermo, our college and career specialists, were not able to make it this evening, but they will be available. They're here, and if you need anything, please shoot an email to them, and I can provide their information. We also have with us tonight
I'm Elizabeth McCarthy, the transition coordinator for Falls Church City Public School.
and the wonderful.
Oh, hi, I'm Jamie Didewick. I'm a senior assistant director with JMU's Office of Admissions.
So we're going to try and keep our part as short as possible because she is way more interesting, and I have a feeling most of you came to hear from an admissions officer because that's who's going to be handling the applications as we go forward. So here's our quick our agenda for this evening. I'm going to start quickly by talking about Northern Virginia Community College, which really is an incredible option we have here in our area. And I think a lot of people take it for granted because it's here and we just know Nova, but it really is an awesome option for so many of our students. I always tell students to keep it in their back pocket, whether it's their first choice and they know they want to start at Nova next year, or they're not quite sure what their plan is. In order to be successful in college, you need to not only be academically mature enough to handle the workload, you have to be social and emotionally mature enough to get yourself up and do all those things and clean your room and get to class and do your work. And I know some of you are sitting here and being like, oh my gosh, what is going to happen, because they can't do that now. I definitely did not wake up by myself when I was a senior in high school. My mother still had to shake me, but she sent me to college with an alarm clock with hopes that I would be okay, and it all worked out. But she knew everything else pretty much was in line. But your student needs to know themselves and you need to know them. And I would say knowing that this is a great affordable option with where you can get kind of those prerequisites out of the way, everyone should always consider it. For our students that might have faced some more obstacles in high school, whether they are first generation college students, they might have a 504 and IEP that's had some they've required some significant support here in high school. Maybe they started off and they just did not have a great start to high school, but as things have continued, they've done better, but they still need a little more foundation before they're ready for a 4-year curriculum and to kind of go forth in the world. Or maybe financially, college is a tremendous barrier for many families. There is a program called the Pathways program, and it allows our students to access our 4-year schools in Virginia. It's specifically tied with George Mason University, and they do 2 years at Nova with an advisor who directs and helps support them while they're there. It's a counselor to help them choose classes to make sure they're on the right path. And then it's automatic admission into George Mason with a certain GPA if you follow their path. I had many students, I've had a ton of students do this over the years, and almost all of them I feel like have either gone on to graduate from either George Mason or other universities in Virginia and have done really well. And so I think it is a wonderful option, and if you want more information, we're going to target some of our students that we feel like would be really good fits for this program. But if you have questions about it, if you feel like it might be right for your student, please reach out to the counselor or any of us, and we're happy to chat with you about that. To turn over to Ms. McCarthy.
Good evening. I am just going to talk briefly. I work with students with IEPs and 504s to help them plan for after high school. As far as the college search is concerned, I partner with Bob Palermo. I can sit with students and parents in meetings. I am not there to sit down and say, this would be a great school for your child, but I am there more for a support to say, you know, how do you work through Naviance? How do you work through different aspects of the application process if support outside of academic classes is needed? Also, when students start targeting schools, I am there to say, well, let's look at the student services and the disability services that they offer at these schools. Is this going to be a right fit? So I'm just there kind of as an additional support along the way with the college search. I also work with Fairfax County and other groups of transition folks here to put on events specific for students with disabilities. And we have a few coming up. We have one that is October 21st, and that's college night at Hayfield Secondary School. And I put these out on the tables as well. And that is a specific college night for students with disabilities who may need a little extra support or understanding of different colleges, the application process, services that go beyond high school. We also have Future Quest, which is an all-day conference at George Mason University. There's a wonderful resource fair that accompanies that. That's also October 26th. We also have a Northern Virginia event that is in the spring, and that's for students who, the students who are in pathways are identified by then, but if students who are not enrolled or participating in pathways are still planning to go to NOVA, that's a wonderful day for students to go and access student services. I also work with students to help kind of focus career paths, so if they're looking at different schools and they're thinking, you know, strong maybe vocational choice, looking at educational training in that area, I can help. I'm here just, you know, as an extra resource, and anything, even if students are planning to take a gap year, looking at different gap years that have been beneficial and then can tie in with different types of vocational educational training after. So if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to call on me. I left information at the table, so even if, you know, this doesn't pertain to you, but if you have a neighbor, a friend who you have heard them talking about, oh, I don't know about what, you know, different kind of options or supports they have at Mason for my student, please take, you know, any literature and pass along. So, thank you.
It's not 2029. That'd be super unhelpful. It's 2019. And just so you know, this will be all up online, so please don't feel that you have to furiously take notes. This will all be available. All right. So at this point, you know, we always revisit this, connecting and searching to the right fit. And many of your students have a well-developed list. Some of them might not, and we are happy to kind of help facilitate. Mr. Palermo and any of us in the counseling office are happy to sit down and help your student find if they'd like to grow their list. I had a student come see me, I'll never forget, last year. He goes, Ms. Reyes, I feel like I need to add more schools to my list. And I was like, okay, kiddo, let's sit down. And I was like, show me your list. And there were legitimately 30 schools on his list already. And I was like, oh, sweet boy, no, we're not gonna grow it, we're gonna shrink it. And that was his whittled down list, and no joke. And so we don't wanna continue to add when it's unnecessary, but if you feel like your student needs a greater breadth of options, you know, we're happy to chat through that. There are some great college fairs coming up. Just because you're not Fairfax County or Arlington residents, you're welcome to go utilize those resources. The Hayfield Fair is going to be in October. And it's also held at Fair Oaks the night before. That I think is one of the best fairs in the area. It also is a great opportunity if your student, even if you know you want to apply to a couple schools. Let's say there's a school that is a private school in Massachusetts, and you went up there last spring, but you know it's your student's #1 choice. What a great opportunity to go and just connect with the admissions officer and say, hey, I want to introduce myself, because typically they're the admissions officers that represent our region. Am I wrong? Okay, good. Okay, for the most part, right? Not always. But, and then you can say, I visited X school, I'm in love with it, I just want to know if there's anything else, you know, you'd like to, you know, you can share with me about the school. Just have a conversation. Those impressions, those one-on-one interactions are what make you stand out. Now, for some people, that is like their worst nightmare ever, having to have that conversation, but at least visiting, signing in, showing that you showed up is the most important thing. Naviance is a great tool. I know we are doing our very best to update Naviance. Right now, Naviance does not have updated GPAs and SAT scores and ACT scores, and I know that is tremendously frustrating for you guys, and I'm sorry. That's the only thing I can say is I'm sorry. We're working to get it updated. We have a transition of staff, and that requires new training, and so we're doing our best to get that done as quickly as possible. But please know that that is something that we're trying to get done. Don't forget also, when you're looking at the scattergrams in Naviance, you'll know what I'm talking about, those GPAs are final senior GPAs, and I cannot stress that enough. If your student has a 3.8 and you're like, how do the students that got in there have a 4.1, and oh my gosh, there's probably no way your student could even have that GPA, let alone a majority of the kids that got in. I want you to take a deep breath and remember they have a whole year to go before that's acquired, and that's not what the schools are looking at when they're using when they're looking at your student's application. That's just our final data. Any questions on that so far? Okay. Things they should have done already. There's a lot of talk of, my student really wants to take another SAT, ACT, or I want my student to take another SAT, ACT. There is a big difference between those two. Does your child want to take another standardized test? Are they interested in improving or getting one more shot at it? Absolutely let them do it. If they feel like they're done, forcing them to do another one is not going to raise their score because they are going in already frustrated that they have to engage in this again. So I would say if they are willing to, have them do that one more test. The October test absolutely will get to schools, and if you're applying regular decision, a later test would also get there, the December test. But other than that, I would say let's call it a day because it becomes a lot, and if you're constantly trying that extra 10 points, that is not going to make or break your application. Your SAT, ACT is one sitting, it's one moment, and it's a snapshot, which is why so many schools are starting to move away and making SAT or ACTs optional. Visiting schools, you can read. I don't need to go through this list, but basically you should be totally engaged if your student is applying. Your student should be completely engaged if they're applying to a four-year school. I will say, I should have said this at the beginning, most of the focus for tonight is going to be on four-year schools. That is just one facet, though, of what many of our students do. We did talk about NOVA, but I want to be clear, we will offer many more opportunities as the year goes on to talk about other options, whether it's looking at a gap year. I believe a gap year information session will be held later in the year by the PTSA. We also offer events for students that are looking to go into career and technical fields right out of high school, and so there are other opportunities. For the purposes of tonight, though, it will be a four-year focus, just because there's so much that goes into that right now. So you can see all this. Again, this will be on the website, and if you have questions about this, please go ahead and ask at any time. I'm going to let Ms. Q take away. Nope, I'm going to let Mr. McAdam start talking about the application process, and we're going to kind of tear through this pretty quickly because I know you've seen a lot of you, especially your students. If your student came to the summer program, they went through all of this already.
Yes, and as Alana already mentioned, Jamie is a much more dynamic person than I am, so we want to get to her sooner rather than later. So again, and I would say that for parents, this is more just for informational purposes because we want your child to be doing all the work on this. Maybe think of it as like if your child is bowling and rolling the ball down the alley, you guys could be like the bumpers to make sure the ball doesn't fall into the alley but stays hitting the pins. But please don't, no more than that would really be necessary. I think you're here to support your child but not do the work for them. Some nuts and boltsy sort of things that we should just mention. When it comes to the actual applying to the schools, so I think I find this to be a helpful chart, and we'll post this. Well, yeah, it's all going to be online, right? So, students, what are you sending to the school? What are we sending? What is the teacher sending? What needs to get sent? Students, you're going to send your college application. Shocker. You also have to, in most cases, write some kind of an essay or personal statement. How are you going to do that? Many schools now use the Common Application. Some don't. But other schools use what's called the Coalition app. I don't know if you've heard of that, but it's another fairly recent application online application that's used. And some students will apply right through a school's website. So what we will send on our end, when we say we'll send it, we use Naviance to send everything. So when when a counselor says, I'll send that for you, we are sending it through Naviance. And so what we will send, if a school is asking for an official transcript, we'll send that. If it's asking for a secondary school report, we'll send that through Naviance, and we'll send a letter of recommendation through Naviance. When it comes to official transcripts, a student must request that in Naviance. So, but now I'll tell you, there are many schools that, this is fairly recent, they're asking students to self-report their grades when they're applying. So a school like Virginia Tech, let's say, when it comes to applying to Virginia Tech, we do not send anything initially to that school. We don't send a letter of recommendation, we don't send transcripts. Everything is done by the student. They'll do the application, they'll do their essays, and they'll self-report their grades. So there are some schools where students will not have to submit an official transcript or will not have to request one. So, but if a school is asking for an official transcript, a student must go on to Naviance, request that for the school they're applying to, and then we'll send it off, along with our letter of recommendation if that's necessary. Yeah, you had a question about that. Yeah.
Do they do that? Does the Common App prompt you to say that you must request the transcripts for each of the school tabs? This is the question. Like how do you
Okay. So the question is, does Common App prompt a student to request the transcripts? No. So what? I don't want to get ahead of myself with this thing, but no, it's a good question. So at some point, we'll talk about this. Let's say a student's applying to a school through Common App. They then must match their Common App account with their Naviance account. When those two are matched, any school that's listed in Common App will automatically populate into Naviance. At that point, though, no. Then students have to go in. So let's say there's 5 schools listed from Common App. Students then must go and check the box and hit request transcripts for those schools in Naviance. Yes, thank you. That's a good question. Teacher letter recommendations will be sent through Naviance as well. Students must put in a request in Naviance for the teachers they've talked to about writing letters of recommendation. So even if a teacher says, yeah, I'll totally do that, a student and teacher have talked face-to-face, a student still must go into Naviance and make that request so that when a teacher logs into Naviance, they'll see, okay, I'm writing for this student, and here are the schools they're applying to. Yeah, do you have a question about that?
Does it make a difference in terms of quarterly grades, or is it basically, so I know you have like a first quarter to end sometime.
November, right.
Is the grades, are they entirely by semester, or does it matter for the quarter? In other words, does it matter when you request her in the fall? Should you do it after the first quarter? I know you're going to get the summer grades in, which haven't been finished yet, but...
Right. So the question was in terms of the timing of the request for the transcripts. So we only report semester grades on transcripts. So I guess to answer your question, no, the timing within the first semester does not matter, as long as it's well before the deadline for that school. So I will say there are some schools that either will allow you to or may even ask for quarter grades. So at the end, so I think our quarter probably ends sometime in November this year. And so after that time, even if a student's already applied at this point, they could come to me and say, oh, could you send my quarter grades, because I know this school will accept those, or this school actually asked me to send my quarter grades, and we can do that either after the fact or in conjunction with sending a transcript. But a transcript is only, so a transcript for any of your seniors is only going to show grades through the end of the junior year, or in the cases of any student who took a summer course, they'll show those summer courses as well. But it will just be the semester grades.
Can I interrupt for a second? I know Brett's talking about Naviance, and like you guys look at it every day and you know exactly what interface we're talking about, and it's meaningless, right? And probably feeling very overwhelming. And if you return to your child and say, do you know what he's talking about? I hope the answer is yes, and if not, it's a pretty easy explanation when they sit down with their counselor. So don't feel overwhelmed by it. It's more just we want to give you the information, but we don't expect you to know it all, okay? I feel like I see the faces when we talk about Naviance, and it's pure panic. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, if that's okay. Did you have a follow-up?
Just a quick question.
Yes.
So a lot of these colleges have a general admission deadline around January 15th. When will the grades be available for official transcripts?
Great question.
So you're asking, so the question was, if a student's applying with a regular decision deadline of, let's say, January 15th, which I think that's what JMU's is, actually, and when would our first semester grades, is that what you're asking? When would those be available? Typically, so this year, our first semester ends...
At the end of January. So what would happen is we would send the transcript when it was due by, so we would make sure it's in by the deadline, but then we also send updated grades once our 7th semester GPAs are calculated. So it's sometime mid-February, those will be sent off. They're around the same time in the region, so colleges, you'll start getting the requests for mid-year reports and your kids will freak out and be like, they haven't sent them. No one has sent them. They will go out, and that's when we update the grades. So we typically do 2 transcripts for every school they're applying to, the regular one, then mid-year, and then the final one goes to the school they're attending.
And I think maybe when Jamie gets up, we can ask her to talk a little bit about how those semester grades might factor into an admissions decision a little bit.
Gina, in a minute.
Yeah, Gina.
So how does it change for ED or REA? Do they just rely on the self-reported?
They're relying on either the self-report or the transcript you send. Typically, that they are not waiting for semester grades at all. The question was, what does it mean when they're looking at, when you're applying early decision or restricted early action or early action? That they're really just looking at the grades that you get then. Typically what happens if they don't have enough information or they're on the fence, you're kind of just right in the middle, you're not a slam dunk, absolutely, they'll defer you to their regular admission pool so they have a chance to get semester grades, see how things are going. Does that answer that?
Here's a question over here, yeah.
Where's the information about setting up a Naviance account?
All your students have Naviance accounts. If one has been created for you as well, it's a matter whether it's been activated or not. If you're not sure, or maybe you logged on freshman year and haven't been back since, we're happy to provide that. If you just either have your student come in and see us, or just send the counselor or Mr. Palermo a quick email saying, I'd like my login information, we can send that to you.
Yeah, and parents can have an account as well, and you can just contact Bob Palermo, and he'll set you up with an account as well. Yeah.
Can you remind the student how to log in?
Oh, of course, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, go
yeah, we'll meet with the kids, and if they're not sure how to log in, we'll definitely, of course, yeah. That's what they have to. They cannot apply to college without doing this at our school. Yes. Yeah, question?
For those of us who have attempted to log in on our I know Mr. Palermo a few times for recess.
Yeah.
There's no value, there's no detriment for the parent not to be on the Naviance account. If we're sitting right beside our student and shooting the Naviance and working for the there's nothing that needs to be specifically a parent action.
Oh, correct.
None.
Yeah.
Her sit beside her and have her go through everything.
Right, yeah, the question was whether a parent sort of needs to have an account, and the answer, no, yeah, for informational purposes, but not in terms of the process of applying at all. Does a parent need an account? So, okay. Oh, yeah.
So we set up a Naviance account recently. Was there one already there?
Maybe not. I mean, so it has to be, every parent has to be activated, and so you would, like Bob would, if you contacted Bob. Oh, student, yeah, no. They've always had it, yeah. Unless you're brand new to the...
Well, so I'm just worried about having a duplicate account.
Oh, no.
No, don't worry about that. Yeah. Oh, last thing, so test scores. Again, some schools now, and this is very nice because it saves some money in this process that can be quite expensive, even just the process of applying, never mind paying for college. Setting test scores. Some schools now will allow students to self-report their test scores, and so what that means is a student does not have to send official scores from either College Board or ACT. So if that's the case, and like on the let's say in Common App, if it's asking students to report their SATs, in that school's case, you may not have to send official scores. If scores need to be sent officially, then a student would have to log into either their College Board account or their ACT account and have those scores sent, and I think the fees maybe like $15 to have those sent. So, moving on, we talked about Naviance. Okay.
Don't Google Naviance.com and expect to be able to have your child log in. You have to go through our website. It's a Mason Naviance account.
Thank you. Again, Common App, the reason it's just mentioned a lot is because so many schools use it now, and most of our students will end up applying to at least 1 or 2, 3 schools through Common App. So it's often used. And again, a student must match their Common App account with their Naviance account. And there's a little video on the bottom of the Naviance homepage. It's under something called Pages, the heading, that show, it's like 2 minutes long, and it shows a student how to match those two accounts. Again, we cannot send anything to a school that's a Common App school without those two being matched, and the teacher cannot send a letter of recommendation without those being matched as well. So it's super important. Again, oh, sorry. Yes, question?
What about the coalition? Does that got to go through the same matching process?
No, it does not. Great question. Yeah, so again, some schools use coalition. Students, though, will send everything through their coalition app, and we will be able to send our materials through Naviance. But they don't have to be matched up. Thank you. But kind of important. So, and I don't want to get too nitty-gritty here, but it's important maybe to know. So, like, if a student's applying to a school through coalition, because they're not being matched in Naviance, a student must go into Naviance and add that college. So under colleges I'm applying to, and say, adding this application, because otherwise we have no way of knowing that student's applying to that school because they're applying through coalition. And I would say, even Virginia Tech, we want to know. Naviance is the way that we track all the information about our students that apply to college. So even a school like Virginia Tech that initially is not asking us for anything on the school's end, we still need to have that school in there so we know, okay, here's all the students that apply to Virginia Tech, because that then informs the scattergrams that you see that our students continue to use year after year, and so we need that information.
We also need it to send mid-year transcripts.
Mid-year and final,
Not
yeah.
in there and final.
Yeah.
In Naviance Common App or Coalition, do we need to identify the student's counselor?
No.
The question is,
Oh, sorry. The question was, does a counselor need to be identified in the? Actually, yes. In Common App, it does. Yeah.
But everything links to Naviance.
Right.
Yeah. Jim's there.
Yeah. Question. No. So, like, that's actually a great question, because Alana mentioned the idea that, like, right now, GPAs and test scores, it informs the student, but that information is never shared with the schools. So, as much as we need to get that fixed as soon as possible, it in no way would ever impact the student. Yes.
When do you project that the grades will be updated?
Oh, good question. I don't know.
We're working on it.
We're working.
The best I can
It's a
say.
work in progress.
Yeah. Know that their GPAs, everything that's in Power School is correct. Power School and Naviance are struggling. They're in a bit of distress together.
This is a really tough time of year for your counselors.
Yeah.
So give them grace on grace.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, one more. Yeah. Right. So anything in Power School is, if you're ever curious about, yeah, if you ever want to know what the students, it's in Power School. The GPA is corrected there. Yeah.
And summer classes are now updated.
I believe for seniors, are there?
They
aren't they?
overall have been
Yeah.
updated. We need to make some final tweaks, but yes, a lot of them have been done. They'll be finalized by the end of the week.
Okay. Am I still talking?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Deadlines are super important. That's stating the obvious, but for students, you have to be aware of this. And really the most important thing I would say is, on our end, deadlines are super important. So you need to make sure that we know the deadlines. So just because you're applying to 10 schools and you know all the deadlines, the reason we ask you to come talk to us before we send anything is we want to make sure that we're doing everything in your best interest. So we want to make sure that we meet all of the deadlines for the schools that you're applying to. We want to make sure that if you say, oh, I'm applying early action, that we see that the early action deadline is November 1 or whatever. So, and we always want to make sure we're exactly on the same page with you, because we don't want to make any mistakes, because this is your future we're talking about. And so in order to make sure that happens, we rely on you to always be communicating with us. The best is in person, but if there's sometimes you just need to shoot us a quick email or something, students, please do that. But we will not send out a letter or recommendation without you having met with us first. That's super important to keep in mind, I think.
If I can also add, with Naviance, we don't get like a little ping every time you make a change. If there's no notification setting, it would be great. And so, let's say you met with your counselor and you told them you were applying regular decision everywhere. Great, we have time, they're gonna write your letter, they have it planned out with you, and then all of a sudden, 2 nights before, you're like, I'm gonna apply early action. and you don't say anything, and you just change it in the system, but you haven't notified anybody, that deadline's going to come and go, and unfortunately, we won't have met it because we weren't notified. If the plan is all along, then that will meet those deadlines, but if we don't know what's happening, we can't accommodate that. Same being said, if you mark early action in your Naviance account and you say you're doing that, we're going to go by that. If you change your mind and you're going to go regular decision, which is absolutely okay, please do that, please go ahead and let us know, just because we don't know automatically.
One quick, oh, sorry, Liza. Yeah.
If you have kids applying to 10 schools, that kid has to get all the schools, all the dates, all the early decision, early action, whatever, and bring that and present that to you.
Let me repeat that. So, yeah, so.
Letters of recommendation.
Great,
Yeah,
great question.
great. So the question was, does a student have to gather all the information about the dates for the different types of deadlines? The super awesome thing about Naviance now is Naviance will give you that information. So when a student puts in, I'm applying to UVA early action, it's going to then indicate, okay, 11/1 deadline right there in Naviance. So when I'm sitting down with a student and I can say, all right, you're applying to this school, okay, 11/1 deadline. Okay, that's a 10/15 deadline. Okay, 12/1 deadline. It's all going to be right there in Naviance. But during that meeting, it's important for me to kind of like make sure, like, you're applying to early action, right? That's what you put in Naviance. Let's make sure that you're definitely doing that. So that's really, it's more of like a reassurance on our end, like, we just want to make sure these are all right the way you put it in here. Because this. Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
But what about the teachers too? Because they have recommendations that they have to
Right.
fill their own.
So the teacher's going to see that exact same information. The teachers, and that's why it's so important that a student puts in Naviance the teacher requests. So even though they've, again, spoken to the teacher, because the teacher, when they log in, they're going to say, oh, I know that so-and-so talked to me, but I got to make sure that deadline was, okay, it's right there in Naviance. When I log in, I can see it right in front of me. Okay.
And we're going to talk.
Yeah, sorry.
With the other question about the teachers, if they have classes at ACC and are getting recommendations, do they show in there as well?
Yeah, so the question was, if a student's taking classes at the Arlington Career Center and they've asked a teacher there for a letter of recommendation, will that show up in Naviance? In that case, a student would need to come talk to his or her counselor and say, I've talked to so-and-so, this teacher at Arlington Career Center, and we'll create an account for that person. And we've done this many times at ACC, and then we'll send directions to that teacher about how to upload a letter and that sort of thing. Okay, yeah.
Said each student has to meet before you'll do anything for them. How do you arrange your schedule so that you can meet with each and every senior that's on your appointment?
So we have an online appointment calendar that students can sign up with us that way. So, yeah.
And counselors will start sending.
Okay.
Counselors will send out, in the next couple of weeks, start sending out messages through Schoology, encouraging students to sign up. If you know your student wants to go ahead and do that, I would say absolutely book, they're welcome to book them anytime, especially if they have early deadlines.
Speaking of that, we have, I know for a fact I posted this on Schoology for the students. So this is, I hope, helpful to people because it kind of gives a pretty hard deadline for us to have information before we're going to send something for a deadline. So October 15th, UVA now has an early decision deadline of October 15th. There's a few other schools that kids typically apply to that have an October 15th deadline. If a student is planning to apply with an October 15th deadline, they, at this point, should have met with their counselor to go over their letter of recommendation, their senior worksheet, the parent brag sheet, make sure that we know that they're applying early. So that should have been done. And then this kind of just goes from there, and it gives you an idea of when we need to have this information by. And I would say, in terms of teacher recs, I would say have similar dates in mind and that sort of thing. Okay? Cool. Miss Kieran.
Do you have a question? Yeah. We do a big.
Can you repeat the question?
So the question was, what kind of things do we do junior year to get ready for this? So we had a night program just like this. We had a speaker. We go over all of this information then during junior year. Counselors go into classes and talk to students about their transcript at the end of junior year, what they still need for graduation, and go over kind of things that they need to be working on over the summer. And then over the summer, we also offered a workshop this summer to go through and start doing all of these things with students, kind of the hands-on piece. And Bob Palermo has also met, unless they're a new student, with all of our seniors by now. He meets with them typically towards the back half of junior year into the beginning of senior year. Anything else? Okay.
Okay, so this is just an overview of the different types of admissions options. Kids have a lot more options now of how they're going to apply to a school. So the first one is early decision. This is the binding one. This is where if you have a full list of schools, you can pick only one if you choose to apply early decision. This is your application. It goes in early, and you are saying to the school, if you accept me, I'm 100% attending your school. There's no other school in the world and nothing else that could sway me. I will go to your school. So they must, and they can only choose one. If a student chooses to apply early decision, they have to be careful to mark that in Naviance, because there are a couple of extra screens that it will take us through as counselors to verify that they're only doing this for one school. So it's just a couple of extra clicks for us to make sure that it's, kind of everyone is being ethical about only picking one school for early decision. And usually the students find out about it in like November and December, okay? So they find out about it kind of before other before regular application deadlines. They can also apply early action. This is where you apply with an earlier deadline, but it is non-binding. You can apply to as many schools as you want to early action, and many of our students do. We have a lot of November 1st, November 15th early action deadlines, but you can apply to as many schools as you want. So if you can get your application ready and it is strong and you have everything ready on time, great, turn it in early. If you are waiting for semester 1 grades, if you are going to sit for another SAT or ACT in October and November, early action might not be a best fit for a kid. If your application still needs some more time to be as strong as possible, regular decision is really a better place to go.
If I can just interrupt, there also tends to be this flurry of activity, and everyone says, everyone is applying early action, I have to apply early action. Everyone is not applying early action. Many kids do, but it's not for everybody, and I want you to assure your student that if they're not ready to do it, don't do it. Mm-hmm. It needs to be right for them, not because they think the entire world is doing it, because they do. Yeah.
Yeah.
How is the early decision binding actually enforced?
Jamie, do you want to have a
Yeah, I mean, we don't have ED, but it's truly enforced, a signed contract that's very hard to break, and that is, you're saying yes before you know financial aid information, and it's pretty much an unbreakable contract in lieu of something very severe happening in the student's life. So, loss of a parent or something like that, or dramatic situation changing. But so it's really important to be cautious and truly say, I will go to the school even if I have to pay full freight, no matter what happens. So it's a truly binding contract. So, yeah, I don't know exactly how they enforce it. There may be some fines and things like that, maybe tuition bills. I am not sure of the answer to.
Yeah.
I've seen a couple of schools that seem to have 2 rounds of early decision. And how does that work if you're doing one early decision? You have to not apply early action if you're going to go into a second round, or how does that work? Because
So let me just make sure I understand your question. So you're saying there's ED1, ED2 at many schools, and if you're also applying early action? So you can apply early action somewhere and apply early decision, not to every school, but you can. Early action, since it's not binding, if you get into your early decision school, whether it's ED1 or ED2, you'll be bound to that. Your early action application, you'll just say no.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can apply other places early action. You can apply anywhere if you're applying early decision, but if you get in, you're committed there.
Can I add one thing? So the other thing too is let's say a student applies for early decision with a November 1 deadline and then finds out in December they didn't get into that school. As far as I know you could apply ED to another school, ED2.
Yeah.
That's an ED2 school.
That's why they did that.
So,
The last type of admission is rolling admissions. Some schools, sometimes your bigger schools, will evaluate transcripts and evaluate applications on a first-come, first-served basis. So instead of holding all of their applications until January 1st and then looking at everyone at once, they will evaluate and give an answer on a transcript and on an application as they get it. Usually the turnaround time is 6 to 8 weeks. Like I said, it's usually bigger schools who have a lot more seats to fill. They will go over things. So usually, if a school is rolling admissions, it is in the student's best interest to apply as early as possible. The earlier you apply, the more seats they have open, and the sooner you get an answer. So that is probably the one type of admission we want kids to definitely come in and meet with us as soon as possible, because for a rolling admission school, when you bring it up in Naviance, they would, for instance, give you a deadline, say April or May, because that's actually when the school stops accepting admissions. But if you meet with us in August or September, which is sometimes what rolling admissions, they'll come and meet with us really early, we can get your application turned in and your transcript submitted in September. Just because they accept them all the way until May doesn't mean you're going to wait until then to submit your application. So for any school that is rolling admissions, just make sure you are communicating with us about when your application is going in so that we know when to submit our part. Yeah.
Isn't it also part of the reason why you do some of these things earlier is because of the aid packages are still available before the school gives away more of its money? Or is that a falsehood?
Apply, as far as, and I'll let Jamie maybe elaborate on this, so you want to get your typically, admissions offices and financial aid offices, while they talk to each other,
They're separate.
They're separate. Most schools are need blind in their admission because
merit?
merit aid is very different. Yes, many of the merit scholarships you have to apply early to be considered. In addition, you want to get your financial aid application if you are going to do FAFSA or the CSS profile. You want to get that in as early as possible because it is a pot of money, and eventually it dries up. Even though you've met a deadline, the deadline is the max deadline, right? And if I'm not mistaken, it opens October 1st.
October 1st.
And all you need are your taxes from this year. You don't obviously need your next year's taxes to be done. This year's and your information. You will need to sit down with your child to do the FAFSA. That is definitely something they cannot do on their own.
Unless you just want to hand them your financial documents.
How much money we make.
You don't want to.
No. And there are FAFSA workshops. We will advertise for that in the coming months. Yes.
What is the benefit? There's certain schools that do early action restricted.
Yes.
And what is the benefit of doing that? Is there any benefit?
Restricted early access is kind of like early decision, but for Ivy League schools. So it is binding in the same way that early decision is binding. So you pick one school, you can apply to one school restricted early access among Ivy Leagues, and then you can also apply to other schools, one other state school early decision,
Early
action.
Yeah, not early action.
But it's binding in the same way that an early decision would be. So some people would argue that early decision and restricted early access can be, It's not binding.
No. Early action is not binding.
Okay.
Restricted early action, those top tier schools just don't want you to apply to all of them early action. So if you apply to one of the Ivies early action, you can only apply to that one and one state school early action. It's basically allowing those 0.1% of our students that are the top to not flood the application pool and ruin chances for all those other students.
Do the colleges report on each other?
You know,
Yes. Don't you think so, Jamie? Like, colleges talk to each other, yeah?
We talk.
yeah, and there's
Pretty good friends.
there's honor. I mean, you're signing honor codes, and
Yeah,
I mean,
that's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
You're signing an honor code, and if you break that honor code for whatever, colleges can revoke admission just by simply breaking an honor code violation. That goes into all the self-reported grades and test scores and things like that. So we're saying, hey, we're going to trust you up front. You just know that there is some repercussions if, you know.
And that's why, like in Naviance, they will have us kind of verify again that a student's only picking one school early decision to again kind of verify to the school that they're using our honor code as well to say that we're not going to let a kid apply to 5 schools early decision.
And I think the stakes are higher now, right? Like schools are aware of games that have been played. I think the cases that have come out, the court cases that have come out, have kind of changed the stakes. And so I think all we have is our honor and our word, and so that is even more important right now, is to always be upfront with what we're doing with this process.
Okay, so I'm going to go through these kind of quickly. For just another note about the essays, when students are writing their essays, the most important part of this slide is just using the writing lab as a resource. Students in their classes last year, and I know the beginning of this year, have worked on Common App essays and college essays in class, but if they feel like they still need work, they need another resource, they need someone else to read over it, the writing lab is a really great resource for students to use. It happens every day after school except for Wednesdays, correct? And it is there after school. It's run by one of our English teachers, and it is another place where students can go and have another set of eyes look over their essay. Test scores, Mr. McAdam already went over this. It just kind of gives you the two websites. If you need to order official test scores, you have to do it through College Board and through their ACT account. So you just log into the student's account, you order the score reports, you put in the schools, and you have them sent. The reports are sent digitally. The only thing I feel like we try to warn the students is about timing. Sometimes it takes a week or two for the scores to get sent out. That's what College Board will quote you. So if a student waits too long and they miss that window, you then have to rush the scores, which can be done in 2 business days, but it's an extra $30 a school at that point, so it can add up really quickly. So the sooner you get your score report sent out, the better.
Aren't you done electronically?
Yeah, so it still takes about College Board will still quote you a week or two, so I think because it is sent digitally, students assume it will happen automatically, which is not the case.
No, it's a volume thing. Think of the tens of thousands of students doing it, and the time it takes to match and send, and for us to receive it and then pair it and match it. So it's actually a shockingly long process, and even the rushing has not been quite a guarantee this year, so you don't want to bank on that either.
Yeah.
Does it matter if you haven't already submitted your application?
No.
You can just send out all your receipts?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Start a file.
Yeah, that's a good point. That I was going to say, you don't have to follow a particular order. A college can receive a set of test scores, they can receive a transcript, or they can receive an application in any order. And once a college receives one of those key components, they create a file for you, and then they'll just start being on the lookout for the other pieces to come through too.
Okay, so this is about our recommendation letters. Really, the 2 pieces of information we need are the senior worksheet, which is done by the students in Naviance. It's a form they fill out and they submit it. Until they actually submit the final copy, we can't see it. Students can have a draft that kind of lives in Naviance, but until they submit it, we can't actually see anything. So students kind of have to get the senior worksheet, and then from parents, we need the parent brag sheet. It is really helpful information for us. I think what I always tell parents is, in general, people are not very good at talking about themselves, right? Especially 17 and 18-year-old kids are not good at talking about themselves. So it is really helpful with the brag sheet when you guys kind of give us information that we wouldn't have otherwise. You know them better than anyone else. You live with them all the time, as I'm sure you're painfully aware. But it is helpful for us to have this information, anecdotes and stories and activities that they do outside of school that we may never know about because we only get to see them such a short period of time. It is helpful for us to read about in the brag sheet. I always tell my parents, you can never write too much, so don't worry that you are writing too much. The more, the better, because then we have so much more information to pull from. Those 2 pieces of information we need based on those, the deadlines, the dates that we had before. That's really when we need that information so that we have enough time to really, for each student, write the best letter possible. There's also a FERPA waiver that we have that is it's linked on Naviance, correct?
We'll give it out there's a senior day, we do stuff in October, we'll have all of our students do it there.
So they sign it, and they also have to bring that into our office, and technically we need that before we can start sending out their documentation. And then at the very end, they come in and meet with us before we can start writing their letter.
The parent brag sheet, is that put into Naviance too?
No, you just email it to your counselor, your student's counselor. And then again, this is a short note about teacher recommendations. Have the student talk with their teacher in person. Once they do that, they put them into Naviance, indicating that those are the teachers they've asked, and let their teacher know their first deadline. And then the teachers will upload the letters and send them off.
Make sure your student asks the teacher. The worst is when the teacher gets the notification that they have a request and they're like, Lana, did you know that they're going to ask me? I'm like, I didn't, but you should probably have a conversation with them. And that's not a good way to start that relationship. That's just the release.
Yeah, we'll skip over that. Okay. This is a slide about, again, ethics and good practice with students. We just kind of throw this out there just to make sure we're kind of reaffirming this, that students should be the one writing their application essays, and I'm sure Jamie can attest to this. Admissions officers can tell when it's not written by a 17 or 18-year-old student. There's just a different voice to it when it's written by someone much wiser. High schools, as counselors, we have an obligation to report any kind of major changes to a college. So if a student makes a large change to their schedule, to their grades, if something happens that kind of changes their application from the state it was when they first turned it in, we are under obligation to kind of call the schools and let them know. Usually we do that in conjunction with families, and we're happy to kind of get those messages across to colleges. And then again, that students are only paying a deposit at one school once they pick their final school. Do we want to go into FAFSA?
We're kind of getting in the weeds. We'll post all this information about FAFSA online, and Mr. Palermo does a really good job. He does his weekly emails, sending out all the information about scholarships available and links. So that is where all of this is. This is just us reading that to you.
These are some frequently answered questions.
Yeah. So just really quickly, I'm not going to open it, but I'm going to link the page on our website. This is about it's kind of a ethical guide for parents to help guide their students through the admissions process. It's through the Harvard think tank, and we're part of that network, and I will link that on our page. We do not rank our students. All the colleges ask that. I mean, not all the colleges, all the applications ask it, because many schools do. We do not. It is not a deficit to our students. We are out of a 4.0 scale. These are just all the questions that are constantly, we get the same ones over and over again. 4.0 scale. Yeah. Only semester grades. No grades. You had asked that before. No quarter grades. No final, the final, I bombed the final, but got a B in the class. Just the B. And can I send my students' first quarter grades? If you request them, yes, you can if the college wants to see them. You just have to let someone know. Yes?
Sorry.
That's okay.
4.0 and then it's a weighted or unweighted. So I thought when we managed to be the higher than 4.0.
You can. Yes. AP and IB classes are a weighted grade. Sorry, I missed that question. It is a weighted grade, but it's still out of a 4.0 scale. It doesn't change our scale. Yes. Honors classes are not weighted here. And I want to be super clear. A lot of people freak out and they're like, Fairfax weights them, and that's not fair to our kids. It doesn't matter. That is what we've heard from every admissions officer, because admissions officer reads our school profile where that is all explained. Jamie, am I right? Okay, she's nodding, and we don't pay her, so
it could be on a 100-point scale and it wouldn't be any different.
No. Thank you.
No sweat.
When should I request the transcript? When you can, when you know, not right before. Also, a lot of times students get very upset because they submit their application and they're like, you haven't sent my transcript yet. But it's a regular decision deadline, and the deadline is, weeks away. We will send it by the deadline, I promise. If there is an application for scholarship that you're applying for and you need it done early, just let us know. But we know the deadlines if they're in Naviance correctly, if you've applied it, and we will get that done. They get senior year grades again sent about 2 weeks after the semester's over. And my counselor still hasn't sent it. If you are really concerned, please, you're welcome to email, but just know if you've talked to the counselor, they know what's in there, it will go out before the deadline. A lot of times too, it'll say sent in Naviance, and then you call the college or you see on your portal that the college hasn't updated that the transcript was sent, and then everyone freaks out. We can see when it was sent and delivered, and we can verify that with the school. So it's not an automatic delivery, so they still have to update their system before it reflects that we've sent it. So it's a process. They get thousands and thousands of applications. So
postmarked by.
Yes.
Or the upload date.
Right. That's all that matters. Thank you. I answered the last one. That was good. Useful information. It's on our website. Yes. No, please.
Can you comment for this high school, what the average acceptance rate for those who choose to apply to the local
Sure. I don't have the data on each school. I do have the data on how many students were accepted and were attending to those schools, and I'd be happy to share that. Percentage-wise, we do very well, but I'd have to calculate that. I don't have that off the top of my head, but I'm happy to share that if asked. Yes.
For the college visits that occurred.
Oh yeah, you guys.
For the students that are registered in Naviance, were their names given to the colleges that where they showed up for the session?
Sure. If they showed up for the session that they visited, they filled out a card when they came there, and the admissions officers file those cards away, put them in the system, and they know it. I have to tell you, anytime they come to visit, whether it's a college rep visit, they make notes in their file that they've been there. It's like an automatic update. So yes, they are recorded. Good question. Okay, 1, 2. Say that one more time. I'm so sorry. The criteria for what? I'm so sorry.
Oh, TOEFL. That depends.
Thank you. Go ahead. You want to answer it?
Sure. It depends on the school. Every college will probably have a different TOEFL score that they require for English proficiency. But for JMU, if you we will take a TOEFL score, the IELTS, SAT writing, or no, not writing. Excuse me. Whatever the SAT portion is. The reading part, and or 4 years in high school in America, 4 years of English under their belt.
So the TOEFL is a test for students that are much newer to the country. They have to be in the country for a very few number of years, and basically it's an ability for them to show proficiency and success. It's another standardized test that is available.
Yep.
And then right behind you. I probably didn't. The question was when I talked about weighting grades, did I say what the weight is? AP and IB classes are all given a 1.0 weight, so 0.5 each semester. The grade is not, if it's a B, it says a B on the transcript, but it'll be calculated as a 4.0 rather than a 3.0 if it's weighted. Yes.
For DE?
Those are also weighted.
Good question.
But do they have to be in lieu of the course that's offered in the high school? So if they take like a course of they got like a 4-credit class and they got an A, that'll be added to their transcript.
The question is, if they took a class at Nova, would it be added to their transcript? Yes, Nova classes, if they did the proper paperwork with us, then it will be added to our George Mason transcript. If it's a high school credit, we can assign high school credit for it, and it will be added to their GPA and transcript. Yes.
Are SL classes weighted the same as HL?
Great question. Are SL classes weighted the same as HL? Yes, they are. That's a really good one. All right. Any other questions? I'd like to introduce Jamie Didowick from JMU.
Oh, you all are awesome. Awesome. Hi, everybody. I'm really excited you're asking a lot of questions because I'm going to chat for a little bit, but I really want you to come away from here having all of your questions answered. So nice to meet you again. I am a Senior Assistant Director with JMU's Office of Admissions. I have been there almost 10 years, and I've been with the Mustangs for over 5 years, and I love the school so much. So I think in the last couple of years, they have sent more students to JMU than any other college in the country, and and I know that because their profile is excellent. So, and then I am also a very proud JMU alum, so please pardon any major bias I have towards this fine institution because I love it so much. It's a kind of a caveat, I can speak very eloquently to JMU specifics. I will do my best to speak in generalities about other colleges, but as you all frustratingly know that everyone is so different on what they require and what they need, so there we go. Just a couple of quick thoughts too. Seniors, you've done a great job, and senior parents, so pat yourself on the back. And no one's getting senioritis, right? No, absolutely not. I do want to tell you that it's important though, when I go do my visits and I talk to the students, I make them chant and say, I will not get senioritis, because we do see those mid-year reports And colleges do have the right to revoke admission to anyone who doesn't complete their senior year successfully. So I don't tell you to scare you, just as a reminder when, you just want to kind of blow off those IB classes, that it is important not to stress yourself out too much, but also stay focused and kind of get the end goal. And all this stress and overwhelming amounts of information really will pay off, because college there'll be some highs and there'll be some lows, but it's truly worth all this stress and the amazing 4 years of growing and learning for you and your students. And the payoff is getting a job or going to grad school after they graduate, and that's a great thing. So just a couple of quick thoughts. I think what I want to say is, that student that had 30 schools on their list, I want to say I think 5 is like my magic number, sweet spot. If you have too many schools that you're getting acceptances for, you have really muddied waters when it comes time for March, April, and May to roll around and they're choosing their school and they've got 6 acceptances or 10, and then you just don't know how to narrow that down. So really be very intentional in where you're applying to schools, and hopefully you've done some great college visits, talk to the reps. I will be at all of the college fairs. I'll be at Arlington October 15th at the Thomas Jefferson Community Center from 6 to 8. I'll be at Fair Oaks Mall at 7:30 to 9:30 on October 20th. October 21st, Hayfield is from 7 to 9. That's a good one. And then anyone, if you want to stretch down to Woodbridge, Forest Park will be the next night on October 22nd. So yay, say hi to me. Gosh, I'll go through real quick on, the process of an application, then kind of what colleges are looking for, and a little kind of a brief plug about JMU, and then I'm going to turn the floor over to you all for questions. Does that sound like a good plan? So it's kind of neat. You hear the early action, early decision. You kind of know about this process. If a student is not admitted early action or early decision, I think with early decision they get deferred. So you are deferred typically to the regular decision process. And that's as if you had applied regular decision in the first place. That can be a very devastating thing for students, and I'm here to tell you it shouldn't be. It means that college wants to take a second look at you. Early action can be really competitive, and colleges don't want to fill their class too early in case some really great students come through the pipeline, and they do in regular decision. So they want to save some room. So that's why it's a little bit more competitive. I know JMU, we tend to lower the bar of criteria a little bit for regular decision, because then we have the full picture of what our applicant pool looks like, and we know how low can we go this year and how many students can we comfortably admit. There are some students who may be denied early action, early decision, and I just want to reassure you that I don't believe you're going to be penalized for applying early action. If you are denied early action, it's almost a blessing in disguise, bear with me, because that college would have without a doubt denied that student in regular decision. So this way you actually know in December or January that that college is not going to be an option for you, and you've got time to apply to other schools. So don't let that be a deterrent for you. Then come the regular decision process, one of 3 things will happen. You'll be admitted, awesome. You could be waitlisted, we'll talk about that, or you could also be denied in the regular decision process. And yes, it is possible to be deferred and then denied, and that's a heartbreaker, and we understand that. So the waitlist process is kind of unique, where colleges use the waitlist as a way to fill any remaining spots in their freshman class. And every year we get asked, well, what do you think my chances will be? And I am being very genuine when I say I literally have no idea until May 2nd how many spots, because we have to wait until May 1st to see how many people have actually placed their deposit and chosen to come to that university. And then after that, in May, we scramble a little bit and say, do we have any room? Do we not? Some years we have no room. And last year we had quite a bit of room, so we went pretty deep into the wait list. So it really varies from year to year, and we have no predictability there. So, and that's kind of a little bit how the process works through the life cycle of an application. It's kind of interesting. This year, admissions counselors right now, we're traveling, we're doing visits to high schools, we're doing college fairs, and then we are heavy reading the month of November, December, January, and February. It's a really crazy busy time for us. And then we release decisions, and in April we entice you to come to our universities and say, we'd love to have you. And then in May we kind of wrap everything up, and then in the summer we're still shockingly busy. So there you have it. So let's see, what do I want to talk about next? What colleges are looking for, and I'm going to slant towards JMU a little bit because I'd hate to give you any sort of misinformation about other colleges. So I'll kind of go into what we're looking for, but you can kind of glean that slightly more selective colleges are going to follow a similar path on what they're looking for. They usually have 2 or 3 big things that they're curious about, or they may take a very holistic approach and weigh extracurriculars just as equally as academics. It just depends. So for us, the absolute most important thing is a rigorous program of study. You all have access to, especially for a school of your size, unbelievable amounts of class opportunities. You have the IB program, which is phenomenal. You have AP classes, you've got dual enrollment, you've got honors, you've got the Career Center. It's just amazing what you have, your students have to choose from. So again, rigor, by far the most important thing. We want to see students find that balance between taking as many challenging classes as you can handle while still maintaining good grades and a life, your mental health, your sanity, also very important things to us too. If you are taking the IB diploma and you are just feeling completely overwhelmed and your grades are dropping and it's showing, scale back. I have no trouble telling students to say, hey, it's okay to drop the IB diploma. Don't cringe. But truly, if it's going to be bringing your grades down, then we got to find that balance. If you're getting straight A's and you're not taking any weighted classes, guess what? You need to ramp it up because you can handle it. And we really look deeply into that. We drill down into what classes you're taking. We look at the 5 major core areas. We want to see the advanced diploma, which is Virginia State Public School type of diploma where you have 4 years of English, 4 years of social science, 3 years of 1 foreign language or 2 plus 2. 4 years of lab science, usually biology, chemistry. We like to see physics or an AP, IB, or dual enrollment science. Not a requirement, but it does help you stand out a little bit in the process. And math. JMU does require 4 years of math. We like to see that 4th year of math be something like pre-calculus, prob stats, something IB Math 1, something along those lines. And then if you keep going to a 5th year math, AP Calc, IB Math Studies, things like that, that's even better because we want to see you take those core classes every year. And then the next most important thing to us in a lot of schools are grades, and we want to see how you're doing in those classes. So specifically for JMU, guess what? We don't look at GPA. Haha, surprise. So we don't care about that number that students just cling to and think it defines them, because truly it does not define who you are. It doesn't tell me anything. A student could come up to me and say, hey, Jamie, I have a 4.0. And I'm like, okay. That could mean a lot of different things. That student could have a C or 2 in there and have great weighted classes. Or that could be a student that has straight A's and no weighted classes. And guess who I'm favoring? I'm favoring the student that's taken the rigor and maybe had some slightly lower grades along the way. But that student has proven themselves that they've been able to challenge themselves in high school, and that is the best preparation for being successful in college. So what we want to see and what we say are mostly A's and B's for final grades in the core classes. That's what we like. But as it can vary, we look at trends in your grades. If your grades are going up, are your grades going down? We see these things. We even see where, say the student had a C in Spanish 1, but the next year they had an A in Spanish 2. We note that. We see that jump, and we really take the time on all 24,000 of our applications to do that. And again, I'm the one that reads for George Mason High School, so I'm really familiar with your school. You're in really good hands. I know it well. And it really helps us to have that context of the school profile and read within the context of the high school. So it doesn't matter that you don't weight honors. It really doesn't. So that's a good thing. Schools look at test scores next, whether it's the SAT or the ACT. Typically they have no preference between the two, but you need to find out if they need to self-report, if they need to become official. But JMU does not need your test scores. And I'm here to tell you that optional really means you don't need to send them. If we wanted them, we would have required them. So we're so excited about this. If you had asked me 10 years ago, if you're going to test optional, how would you feel? And I would have said, oh my gosh, that's just too much. That's crazy. But now I think it's the most awesome thing in the world, because we've done 5 years of studies. This is in the making, had buy-ins from all of our academic deans across all of our colleges, and we've determined that your test score is not a predictor of success at JMU. It's the classes that you've taken. It's 4 years of time versus 4 hours one morning on a Saturday where maybe you weren't feeling so good, or you took a test once or twice. And it's just truly not something that we need to see. So you don't need to worry about sending them. You heard it from me. One less thing to worry about, which is awesome. So A few other things, extracurriculars. Typically, colleges want to see quality over quantity. I get very suspicious when I see 8 to 10 to 12 things listed on an application because I'm thinking, hey, you don't have time to do all these things or to truly be an invested member of that organization. I would so much prefer seeing 1 or 2 things that student is truly passionate about. Maybe you love the marching band and you were tapped as drum major senior year, or you are the president or a leader of your club or organization, you have a job, you were named employee of the month, you were, anything. You can't do extracurriculars because you are home and you have responsibilities at home. That is a very meritable extracurricular activity. Please tell us all of those things, and we want to know those. So again, quality. If you find yourself as a senior, if you're going to something and you're just kind of going, ugh, just do some soul searching. Say, why am I doing this? If you're doing it just to put it on your college application, it's time to drop it. And I would not spend your time. Your time is so precious and valuable, and I would find much more valuable things to spend your time on. So I mean that truly. And honors or awards you've received, preferably from 9th grade up. We don't need to know that you were the superstar in kindergarten. That's okay. You can leave that off the application. And then, let's see. The essays, personal statements can come into a big factor or not. Some schools will do interviews, some do not, just because they simply don't have the ability to do so. The letter of recommendation, JMU makes it optional because they're going to say you're great, so they don't carry quite as much weight in our process. But if you are absolutely set on sending a letter of recommendation, we just accept one, and we would prefer it from a teacher or a counselor. So they write great letters. But have your student choose somebody that really knows them well and can speak a little bit more about that student. So. All right, so that's kind of everything in a nutshell, deadlines, processes, too. But I just want to give you a quick little plug for the university that I love so much. And JMU is such a special place, and a lot of students that are in Virginia think it's their 13th grade, or they just say, oh, I know JMU. You're 2 hours away. I'm pretty familiar. But what I don't think a lot of students realize is the depths of opportunities that we have for our undergrads. We're primarily an undergraduate university with unbelievable amounts of research opportunities, study abroad opportunities, and the difference by coming to JMU versus a larger university that has a large graduate school population is, guess who those research projects are going to? Those publications, those invitations to conferences, they're going to the undergraduates, even freshmen and sophomores at JMU, because our graduate school is this big. And that's a huge advantage that people don't quite realize. So I want you to come back and visit and take a hard look at JMU. And there's just some amazing things that kind of make it a little bit different than any other university that I've ever experienced. We have this tradition where we hold doors, and students, staff, faculty, everybody will hold a door. I'm talking, you will hold the door for a good 15, 20 seconds while somebody's walking across the room. And you can draw some cute metaphors of saying JMU really opens doors for you, for your future. Absolutely, yes, we do. But we do it because it's this absolutely amazing culture where everybody's friendly, and I use the word nurturing a lot. And if you're looking for a university that students don't compare GPAs, they build each other up, they help each other study, they help each other succeed, they pull up another seat at the table for their peers, and the faculty and staff do that for them, it's a very, very special place. There's a reason we have a 90% freshman retention rate, and we're always ranked as some of the happiest students in the country. So just want to throw that out there. We have an open house on Saturday and another one on Saturday, November 9th. And so, yeah, come check us out. But I want to open the floor. I want to hear your questions. Hit me. I'm ready. Go.
You mentioned that come deposit day, you got fewer deposits than you expected.
We did.
I know tech has... It's weird.
Yes.
That y'all are talking. How do you think that's going to affect techs or yours, newer techs, admissions process this year?
Yeah, that's a great question. So yes, our friends did.
Kind of like some empty desk quick stats.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, he's asking how Virginia Tech's over-enrollment, their over-enrollment was over 1,000, closer to 1,400 in their freshman class, which did act, and how will that affect our processes this year? It has a shockingly large ripple effect, and that's our biggest crossover with applications. So it hurt a little bit. We're still kind of licking our wounds and recovering. We don't, to be honest, we don't know. They haven't said why, and I don't know if they're going to change anything. I don't know what happened, if it was a fluke or intentional or what. So I hope, and my hope is to admit more students early action this year, and also in regular decision just a little bit more. In years past, we've been very blessed to always meet our class and hardly go to the wait list. So this was just to be really candid, this was an eye-opening year. And so we may change things a little bit. I don't see us doing anything dramatic, but I see us potentially admitting a few more students this year than we have in years past. So I don't know. I haven't really been able to even talk to other schools, but I mean, even William and Mary went to their wait list before May 1st, which is...
Jamie, can I just mention? So
Yeah, feel free to jump in.
Juan Espinoza, who's the Dean of Admissions at Tech, it was a fluke. And
Oh, yeah.
As someone who worked in admissions, I mean, I know it's sometimes just impossible to predict year to year. They try their best, and usually it's amazing how well you guys do in terms of the yield. But sometimes things happen, and last year it was a weird one for Tech. There's no doubt it is going to impact in some way how many students they're able to accept this year. I mean, that's just the facts. And so the trickle down will probably be that it's going to impact JMU.
Sure. If you're feeling stressed about your job, just realize that my job depends on the decisions of 17-year-olds. So it's okay. But yeah, we try our best, and it'll be an interesting year. So thanks. Good question.
Early decision was deferred, but early action is not.
So they both. Early action and early decision both defer. Yep. Yes.
College savings plan's only been around since 1996. Do you feel that the trend towards increasing, like, I respect what you say, but I think more people are looking at state school student costs and because of the savings plan. So I personally wonder, these sort of trends are going to continue.
Trends on?
For instance, Virginia High.
Oh, you mean a larger enrollment in state schools based on savings accounts have only been around for a short while? I don't know. It's a hard thing for me to predict. I'm going to honestly say I don't know the answer to your question. Yeah. And we'll go here. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, so great question, Todd. Yeah.
I just had a question about how successful you think Mason students have been at JMU.
Very, I would say.
So I'm just going to repeat that. The question was, how successful have Mason students been at JMU?
I'd say very successful. I mean, I don't have data off the top of my head of how well you all have done, but I would say very well I think because you've got an excellent program here, your students have access and are taking. The difference is you can have a high school that offers every type of amazing AP, IB program, but if you don't have students that take advantage of that, there you go. But Mason students do take advantage of that. I rarely see students who don't take some sort of, we call it program of study or rigor. So I would say they're faring quite well. So, yeah.
And then one more back there. Was there one more question?
I'm trying to take in all the early decision and all, but do you have a fairly high academic student who knows like an engineering program is what they want to do? Do you recommend early decision, or if they're going to maybe a scholarship in there, is there a better way to do it because you don't know the scholarship if you do early?
That's good. If a student is high achieving, if they should go early action, to me there's no harm in going early action because, worst case scenario like we talked about is you're deferred, and that means you get a second look, and there's no harm in that whatsoever. And like I said, if you are denied early action, it truly is a blessing in disguise because it means you would not have been competitive whatsoever. So there's really no negative to applying early action other than the timeline comes up a little bit sooner in senior year. But there's also no disadvantage to regular decision too.
Also, with engineering programs, we have seen a real spike in applications to those. Those have become so much more competitive over the last 10, 15 years. And I have seen several schools go to rolling admissions on their engineering programs. And so there are some, and I don't want to like freak anyone out, but it's worth looking into those to see if they fill up, because sometimes they will fill up with an early action class and then a regular decision, while they still might get into the school when you get into the program. And so that's something just to talk, and that's not information that we would necessarily have here, because that's real program specific, but an admissions office absolutely would. And if I can also add to that quickly, some schools just accept to the school, your major has nothing to do with their acceptance, but some schools are very, like JMU, which is awesome. Some schools are very major specific.
Yeah.
And so it's really important to know what schools do what, especially with engineering. I feel like that's a big one.
Yeah.
I have some questions on the activities you mentioned. You just want to see like an activity.
Right.
Maybe the student who really did focus on 2 or 3, and then did some other activities that by design were not heavy lift. Didn't do it to pad the college resume.
Right.
Like, this would be fun, and I can kind of come and go, and it's easy, and it's fun, and I can see my friends. Does that need to be fully?
No. If you've got 2 or 3 passionate activities, but then a few others that they're just a great activity that a student is interested in, there's absolutely no harm. And, I don't mean for you to misunderstand what I was saying. There's no negative to putting those on the application either. So no college is not going to admit a student because they see 10 activities on an application. So it's truly going to come down to their academic performance for the most part. So no negative to do that there. Yeah.
The student gets accepted under early action, and they want to wait, can they defer their acceptance?
If your student is accepted early action, they still have until May 1st. They can't defer their acceptance, but they've got lots of time to decide. So May 1st is kind of that national, deadline day to say, here's my deposit, I'm committing to this university. Yeah, yes?
I go back and forth about the FAFSA. Because people say that they're recommending you should do it, that everybody should just do it.
Yeah.
But then if you do know that you're not going to qualify anyway, and you answer the question in the application, no, that they're not going to ask for that, but then you turn in a FAFSA. It just seems kind of strange that, so you said you're not going to ask, but then you're submitting a FAFSA. So should you ask?
Yeah, that's a great question. If you said you weren't going to submit a FAFSA or didn't think you needed to, but then you did later on, is that the question? I can tell you from an admission standpoint, we have no idea if you're submitting a FAFSA or not. So there's never going to be a negative impact on your actual admissions decision, whether you do the FAFSA or not, at least for JMU. I believe, is it true that you have to fill out the FAFSA to receive scholarships for or no?
Not for merit.
Not for merit.
Some schools that do want to see it, but that would be school by school.
Yeah.
Specific. Those are for merit based.
So even if you're not, you're not going to qualify, you should still do it.
Yeah, I mean, because what does not qualify mean?
Yeah, you never know.
There are so many circumstances that fall into it. You could also do what's called the FAFSA forecaster, which kind of predicts, which doesn't report any of it. That can kind of give you a sense of whether it's worth your time or not.
Yeah, you're only out your time, which is valuable, but that's the only thing that you're losing by not filling out the FAFSA. Yeah, it can. Yep, it can feed into work-study jobs. It potentially could open some doors for things, so I don't see any overly negative reason to not do the FAFSA. So yeah. Yep.
1, 2, 3. So in the back. That's okay.
So the financial aid that you were talking about, you applied that after you got accepted, right? You don't put that in before.
No,
you submit before. Yeah.
The question was, when do you apply for financial aid? Yes, I would say, again, FAFSA opens October 1st. Get your stuff going now, even though if you haven't started the application. They're not going to give you your package until way later, but they want to start receiving that information.
Yeah. Yeah, it helps us kind of predict how much money we may end up with. So for you, right here.
Oh, a question about the SATs.
Yeah.
You're saying it's not required to submit them. I was just looking online and it said that 70% of kids last year did submit them.
Yep.
And I was just wondering, if they're good SAT scores, do they sway you in another way, or they truly don't bother?
Good question. Yep, 70% reported, and I think it's because they didn't trust us. I really do. I think that number is going to drop from year to year. As I say my PSA, I'm like, please, you don't need to send them. So I'm hoping for 50 this year. So I will give you kind of an anecdote from 3 years ago. I have personally, not from the school, but denied and waitlisted students with a 1550 and a 1600 back when we required the SAT. So even prior to that, you can't test your way into JMU. So sending really strong test scores is not going to change a thing. We don't need them for scholarships, and we don't even need them for the honors college. So I think right there is that kind of moment of realization, is like, oh, I truly don't need to send them, because it really boils down to what a student has done. And then it's a positive thing on the flip side. You know, I've had students with has IB diploma completers with almost straight A's who had some very low test scores that it felt so wrong to penalize them in some way. So now we have that freedom to say, it doesn't matter if they're low. So yeah, you're welcome. Great question. So trust me, you can trust me. I think we had here next.
So if you're accepted under early access and you're applying to a competitive program that you said might fill up on a rolling basis, and you defer, does your application say, if you're applying for this program and then they accept you into that program, or do they accept you into the program later? And if you deferred your acceptance, could you potentially not get in the program if you wanted to get in?
I can't answer that question
Again, you're
and we want to repeat the question.
Anything unless you're deferring for a year. So once you're accepted, you're accepted.
Yep.
And so if you're accepted to an engineering program, that offer stands for you. But again, not every school allows for that. Not every school means you have to apply to a program. So again, that's school specific.
They're going to hold your spot because they know you have until May 1st to say yes, and they're banking on some of those students saying yes. So they are going to hold that room more than likely. But, again, any specific college, you may want to ask that question too, and just in case.
Mr. Rifkin, and then over there,
Just FAFSA opens the first, we want to know everything else. When does that application open?
CSS.
I think it's also, is it the first?
I'll be honest with you, because not every school requires CSS, I'm happy to look that up and let you know.
There's only 4 in Virginia.
There was a question over here.
Yes.
Anything here?
Yes,
please.
So you're going to have a workshop sometime in October?
For what?
FAFSA. We typically pair with Fairfax County because they have actually tremendous resources in Fairfax to do FAFSA workshops, and so Bob will put that on. Mr. Palermo will put that on the Schoology messages that go out when those are being offered.
It's typically at Marshall High School.
Yeah, super close. We've tried to do it here, but we don't get a ton of attendance, so it's better to use other resources.
Yeah.
Guys, we only have a couple of minutes. Are there any super burning, I'm going to get that answer for you, questions?
Are you going to post the
Yes, so the video will be online. It'll include the presentation, and we'll also post the presentation. We'll post the site. I know people that post things for me. We'll post the site for the Harvard Ethical kind of Guide to Decision Making for Colleges. And thank you guys so much for coming.
Jamie, a big round.
Thank you.